video, I'm going to walk you through some of the things that you're going to need to put together a pet first aid kit at home so that you can be prepared in the event of an emergency. Now, maybe not surprisingly, this is going to look really similar to what a human first aid kit would look like, with a few important additions. Some of those additions are going to be ways to muzzle your pet in the event of an emergency. So there's a few different types of muzzles that you can get for your dog. Basket muzzle like this one that can be used for some dogs. Most of the time we're going to use a nylon mesh muzzle, something that's appropriately sized for your dog. They do make muzzles for cats that will cover the nose, mouth, and eyes, and covering the eyes can sometimes help calm the cat a little bit in an emergency. You also want to have a way to transport your pet to a veterinarian in the case of an emergency. And so for smaller dogs and cats, a carrier that's appropriately sized, and ideally something that can be taken apart, that has a top and a bottom half, that's easier to put your pet in and take your pet out. Larger dogs, you may need to have a sling, sometimes a large board, or sometimes just some help for transport. Towels and things can be good for using as a makeshift sling in dogs, and can also be used to help keep a pet warm during transport if they're cold, or just to support them during the transport period. You're going to want to have some disposable gloves. Non-latex is preferred because people commonly have latex allergies, even if they're not aware of them. When you're choosing gloves, you want to make sure you choose a glove that is an appropriate size for your hand. It should be snug. If it's too loose, you'll have a really hard time using the gloves. Some other important items: having nail clippers for your pet that are appropriate. So larger clippers for dogs, smaller ones for cats. Some other items: styptic powder is something that you're going to want to have on hand for nail bleeding. So if you clip your dog's nails at home or your cat's nails at home, that may be helpful. You're also going to want to have a type of leash, and because our pets aren't always wearing their collars when they get into trouble, having a slip lead type leash is helpful. So you have a looped end that you can adjust the size of, slip it over your dog or sometimes maybe your cat's neck, tighten it so that it fits snugly, and you can have a way to restrain them. It's also good to be able to take your pet's vitals, and one of those important vitals is being able to take the temperature. So having a quick read thermometer, and by quick read I mean 6 to 8 seconds, because nobody wants to be taking a pet's temperature for longer than about, well, probably 3 or 4 seconds, but we'll settle for 8. And it's a really important thing to have. You can pick them up at any local pharmacy. The other important things that you want to have available are going to be things to take care of a wound. If there's any type of injury to your pet, having the materials needed to clean and cover and protect a wound are also very important. Having clippers to clip the fur and otherwise trim around a wound, or potentially allow you to explore to see if there is a wound, is useful. Having items like hydrogen peroxide and isopropyl alcohol can also be helpful for cleaning wounds and other uses in a first aid kit. Keeping in mind that these items do have expiration dates, and so we want to be mindful that we're checking the first aid kit on a regular basis, and anything that's expired is thrown out and replaced. Other bandaging materials would be things like gauze squares and roll gauze. It could be used for various applications and bandages and such. Having a tube of a triple antibiotic ointment like Neosporin is often handy. And another thing you might not think about would be sterile water-based lubrication jelly. They can come in these little packets, or they sometimes come in a tube. I tend to prefer the packets because it's easier to keep them clean. If you have a tube, it can get contaminated. So having the individual packets is nice, but a tube is also acceptable. You're also going to want different types of tape. So adhesive and non-adhesive tape. So adhesive tape, obviously, so it can stick to things, but you also want to have what's called cohesive wrap, which is non-adherent, won't stick to your pet's fur or skin, and so that's a handy thing to have as well. You don't want to forget some scissors. So handy pair of scissors, but you want them to be bandage scissors. Bandage scissors will have a blunt end on either end, so if you are trying to remove a bandage, you won't inadvertently cut your pet's skin. Really important for that. Some sterile eye wash. In case of ocular emergencies from an injury or foreign material in the eye, you can flush your pet's eye out with sterile eye wash. Now, finally, the most important part of your pet first aid kit is going to be having emergency contact information. So, on hand, you want to have updated information for your pet's regular veterinarian, the local emergency veterinary practice contact information, and it's also good to have Animal Poison Control's pet poison hotline information at hand. You don't want to have to go scrambling looking for this information in the event of an emergency. That's also going to be really important in the case of a disaster, where in addition to information about where your pet gets its veterinary care, you also want to know where you can keep your pet in an emergency if you're in a situation where you cannot keep your pet with you. So having information about local animal shelters or pet-friendly hotels, friends and family that you can stay with, remembering not to just look in your area, you need to look outside of your area and also sometimes outside of your state. Having that information is going to make dealing with a disaster that much easier and allow you to take your pets with you or know that they're getting cared for properly. Other items for the disaster kit, you want to make sure you have a supply of food for several days at least, as well as any medications they may have. Any medications need to be in a list or, if possible, items that you can keep in your first aid kit, again, ensuring that they're not expired. For the food, you also need to be able to put food in a container. So having food bowls are easy things to forget about in a disaster, but it's going to be really crucial to have that available. Bedding for your pets, toys, treats, other things that will help keep them more comfortable in an emergency as well. And if you can plan ahead, have a first aid kit and a disaster preparedness kit together, put together, ready, you know where it is, it's conveniently located. This is going to save time and reduce stress in an already stressful situation. So hopefully this has been helpful and you can understand the things you need to do to put together a pet first aid kit at home.